All right, diving in deep today with Amadeus Espiritus and this track, Curse of Cain. You guys sent us some seriously interesting stuff, lyrics, a whole YouTube transcript, even some reviews. Like, we've got raw hip hop, but biblical stuff too, even a little conspiracy. What's grabbed you from all that?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because blending pop culture and darkness isn't exactly new for hip-hop.
Mm.
But the way Amadeus Espiritus does it in those first lines, Django Jedi and sky over the rainbow red-eye, aim low flamethrower at the Dragos dead-eyed. It's like he establishes this unique voice. He's not just referencing stuff. It's more like creating this whole mythical landscape right off the bat.
Yeah, no, you're so right. It's not just like name dropping, it's like setting a tone. And speaking of tone, I'm really struck by that kind of back and forth between like street life and then this almost spiritual vibe. Like you've got in a city where the skinny niggas shoot shit, and then right next to it, saw the angels in the kitchen, went to psych, I was already in the system.
Mm.
Is that duality something you see a lot in his work?
It is, yeah. And it's one of the things that make him so fascinating. Like, is it about redemption? Is he making a statement about society? You know, those themes come up in hip-hop a lot. But Amadeus Espiritus brings in these super specific personal details like being a teenage dad, 9/11, his own struggles with addiction, the legal system. It's not just the streets in general, it's rooted in his own life.
It's like those details ground those kind of out there parts. You know what I mean? Because in that YouTube transcript, he goes all in on this Curse of Cain thing, even throws in some pretty, let's say, unconventional interpretations. At one point, he says, we have no idea what the mark of K was. We don't know God, Marhim God in way that people don't touch them. If you touch them, it's going to be bad for you. There's going to be vengeance going to down. Definitely not your average Sunday school stuff.
Totally, and he's not preachy about it either. It's like he's taking this biblical concept and weaving it into his own, well, his own personal mythology, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Remember, the Curse of Cain is about being marked, being an outsider, and that's definitely how he's positioning himself. But then he takes it further with lines like, my president, a shapeshifter pope, is a Satanist, and telekinetic relic shift dimensions, I'm legendary.
Okay, yeah, those lines definitely caught my attention. I mean, it's one thing to pull from your own life, but is this him stepping into, like, conspiracy theory land?
It's possible, but we got to think about all the ways those lines could be read. I mean, is he trying to be provocative? Or does he actually believe that stuff? Is he even saying he believes it, or is he building a character who does? This is where analyzing it gets really interesting.
For sure. The critics are definitely picking up on something, though, calling him the next big voice in hip-hop. They love the way he blends genres and connects with people. They're even comparing him to Kendrick Lamar and Earl Sweatshirt.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about his work that's hitting people so hard, especially with those comparisons in mind?
Well, you know Kendrick's work pretty well.
Yeah.
What do you see as standing out about how Amadeus Espiritus approaches those similar themes? Is it how complex the lyrics are? Or is it something about the way he mixes those really personal things with these bigger, almost mythic ideas?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think it's the rawness of it all. Like, he's not hiding from the tough stuff, the pain, the anger. But there's also this little glimmer of hope, like he's searching for something more. I think that's what makes it so relatable. He's not preaching at us. He's right there in the lyrics struggling, too.
And that struggle is a huge part of the Curse of Cain idea, isn't it? It's
No.
not just about being marked. It's about what you do with it. Do you just let it define you? Or do you find a way to be more than that? That seems like the big question Amadeus Espiritus is wrestling with.
And that's where the music comes in. It's not just background. It's got this raw energy. But then these moments of beauty, too, almost like the music's reflecting that same struggle. Like he's taken elements of Afro Drill, which has that rawness and urgency, but he's blending it with something more melodic, almost like he's thinking things through.
Right. He's definitely playing with genre, which is something a lot of the critics have pointed out. It's not just the words, it's the whole sound he creates.
So we've got all these layers to unpack.
Mm-hmm.
The street stuff, the spiritual stuff, even those conspiracy theory bits. Where do we go from here in this deep dive?
I think we need to dig into the how of it all. What are the actual techniques he's using in the lyrics to do this? How's the music working with the message? And the biggest thing, and what does all this mean for you as a listener?
Okay, so let's get into some of those lyrical techniques you were talking about. We've got a lot to unpack here, from the super personal stuff to the almost, I don't know, prophetic sounding stuff.
Yeah, and it's really how he brings it all together that stands out. Take that line, survivor's guilt nearly killed me.
Yeah.
It's so raw, so honest. It's not just rhyming for the sake of it. He's really laying bare his emotional state, you know?
Yeah, it's almost like he's giving us permission to do the same, to be vulnerable and admit that life's complicated, But then he follows it up with those lines about being legendary and shifting dimensions. It's almost like he's owning that cursive cane thing, like it's a source of strength.
Exactly. He's playing with that idea of duality, being both human and something bigger. The curse is usually seen as a bad thing, a mark of shame. But he's flipping it, making it a badge of honor. He's a survivor, a warrior, someone who's overcome all these limitations.
But he doesn't shy away from the struggle either. There's that line, pockets broke entirely, my heart is swollen the size of Venus. Like, even with all this bravado, he's still human, still dealing with real-life problems.
Right, and that's what makes him so relatable. He's not afraid to show his flaws, his doubts. He's not trying to be some perfect, untouchable figure. It's that honesty that lets him connect with listeners on a deeper level.
Okay, so we've talked about the lyrics, the emotions, the way he mixes the personal and the mythic. But what about the sound of cursive cane? How does the music itself contribute to everything we're talking about?
The music's just as crucial as the lyrics here. It's driving, intense, which mirrors the lyrical content. But within that intensity, there are these moments of reflection, of beauty, creating a dynamic contrast.
Yeah, it's not just like a wall of noise. It's like it's been carefully put together to take you on a trip, just like the lyrics do. It's like he's taken stuff from Afro Drill, which has that raw energy and urgency, and blended it with these more atmospheric sounds that give it depth.
Absolutely. He's drawing on a bunch of different influences, blending genres in a way that feels fresh but also familiar. He's not just going with what's trendy. He's creating something new and exciting, his own path.
So we're talking about curse of Cain as this mark of being different, being an outsider. It seems like Amadeus Espiritus is actually using that to his advantage, turning it into power, a symbol of how resilient he is and how unique his vision is.
Right. He's not running from his past, but he's not letting it define him either. He's taking ownership of his whole story, the good and the bad, and using it to fuel his art.
So about those comparisons to Kendrick and Earl, do you see Amadeus Espiritus as part of that same lineage, or is he doing his own thing completely?
Good question. I think they definitely share that willingness to tackle complicated themes and to experiment with the sound of their music. But Amadeus Espiritus brings his own unique set of influences and experiences, He's kind of pushing the limits of what hip-hop can be while still respecting the roots of it.
Something that really stood out to me in the reviews was this idea of him speaking to a new generation of listeners. They were praising his lyrics and how he blends commercial appeal with a message that resonates with people from all walks of life. Do you think that's true?
Definitely. I think he's speaking to a generation that's grappling with the same stuff He is identity, purpose, trying to find meaning in a world that often feels chaotic. He isn't afraid to ask the hard questions, challenge things. And I think that connects with young people who are looking for something deeper than just entertainment.
So looking at the big picture, what does all this tell us about Amadeus Espiritus as an artist? What are the key takeaways?
I think the main thing is that he's a complex artist who's not afraid to push himself or his listeners. He's using his music to explore things that are personal and universal at the same time. And he's doing it with a level of honesty and vulnerability that's rare to find.
And he's not afraid to experiment, to blend different genres, to really push what hip-hop can be.
Exactly. He's a true original, and I think this is just the beginning for him. But the important thing is, what does it all mean for you? What speaks to you most from all this?
That's a great point, because we can break down the lyrics and the music all day. But at the end of the day, it's up to each listener to decide what it means to them.
Yeah, that's what's so great about art, right? It's open to interpretation. It can spark all sorts of thoughts and feelings in different people.
You sent us all this stuff because something about Amadeus Espiritus got your attention. What is it about his work that speaks to you?
Maybe it's how he's willing to explore the darker parts of life. Or maybe it's how he's searching for meaning and redemption. Whatever it is, it's clear he's tapping into something powerful, something that really connects with people.
And we haven't even really talked about all the praise he's getting. Maybe that's part of what drew you in. He's being called a major new voice in hip-hop. What do you think about that?
Well, the critics' opinions definitely add another layer to the conversation. It's always interesting to see how other people are interpreting his work and if their views line up with yours.
Right. It's like we're all trying to understand this curse of Cain in both a literal and metaphorical way. What does it mean to be marked, to be different? What does it mean to struggle and want something more?
And those are questions that everyone has to figure out for themselves. There's no right or wrong answer. It's about the journey, the willingness to engage with these ideas.
So as we head into the last part of this deep dive, I want you to keep thinking about those questions. Let's dig a little deeper into those unconventional parts of Curse of Cain, and let's consider what it all means for you, for the future of hip-hop, and for how we see the world around us. You know, it's kind of wild how Amadeus Espiritus takes this super old idea, the Curse of Cain, and makes it feel so real, so now, you know? Like it's not just some Bible story, it's like a metaphor for what we all go through.
Totally. I mean, think about it. Cain's wandering the earth,
Yeah.
marked as this outsider.
Mm-hmm.
How many people feel like that today? Like they don't fit in, like they're carrying this burden they can't shake.
Yeah, especially in hip hop, where being real is everything. Claiming that curse is almost like a mission statement, you know? And you were saying before how he could be creating a character, which adds another layer. But then there's that line in the hook, they wear the sign envious eyes and want to murder artists. That's pretty heavy stuff.
It is. And it kind of gets at that double-edged sword of being an artist. You're putting yourself out there, making something beautiful, something unique. But that also makes you vulnerable, a target.
Yeah, he's not just talking about actual violence, right? It's more like the ways people try to tear artists down, shut them up, the jealousy, the criticism, the pressure to fit in.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, what is it about Amadeus Espiritus that's getting this reaction? What's so threatening about what he's saying?
Maybe it's because he's willing to call people out. He's talking about corrupt politicians, hypocrisy in religion, the systems that keep people down. That's got to make some people uncomfortable.
And he's not doing it from some high horse either.
Mm.
Remember how we talked about seeing angels, then being thrown into the system? He's speaking from experience, and that gives his words weight.
You mentioned earlier how the critics love him, and it's worth thinking about. Do you think that ties into this whole curse of Cain idea? Like, does being seen as an outsider make his art more attractive somehow, more real?
That's a good point. There's definitely something captivating about the artist who's struggling, fighting against the current. Maybe we see a little bit of ourselves in that.
And it's not just the struggle, it's the talent, too. He's clearly a skilled lyricist, but he's pushing boundaries with the music, too. There's that rawness, that intensity, but also these moments of pure beauty. It's like he's not scared to be vulnerable, to let all his emotions out.
Which takes us back to that main question. What does it mean to embrace the curse of Cain? Is it about accepting your flaws, your darkness, finding strength in your pain? Or maybe using your art to fight back against the forces that try to silence you?
It's like he's saying, I'm not going to let anyone tell me who I am. I'm going to decide that for myself. And that's powerful, especially for young people trying to find their place in the world.
So to wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. Amadeus Espiritus is more than just a rapper. He's a voice for those who don't have one, someone who stands up for the outsiders. He's a reminder that even when things are tough, there's always hope, a chance for redemption.
And maybe that's the real message of the Curse of Cain. It's not about being stuck in the past. It's about using your experiences, the good and the bad, to make something beautiful, something that matters, something that can inspire people.
So go back and listen to Curse of Cain again. Let it all sink in. What do you hear now that you didn't before? What parts stick with you? What makes you think? What inspires you?
Because this is just the start of the conversation. Amadeus Espiritus has a lot more to say, and we're all invited to listen.